In this video, I really want to talk about the lures that we throw. And I believe that a lot of anglers out there really feel like sometimes you just got to get everything right. You got to have the right lure, you got to put it in the right place at the right time to catch a bass. And anymore, I just don't worry about the baits that I throw. I really don't. And I've just seen a number of things out there on the water that have really led me to believe that trying to get everything perfect with the bait that you have can just be a real waste of time. And in this video, I'm gonna kind of explain that a little bit further. Now, before we get into the video, this one's brought to you by my apparel company, Finn Fishing. Guys, I just got a restock of hats in. And so, including this hat that I'm wearing right here, this is a Stars and Stripes hat. Now, these hats all come with a wooden bass badge on the top. A lot of guys have always thought that was leather, and then they see it or they touch it and they're like, oh, that's wood. They're an extremely comfortable hat. This wood comes from an old bourbon barrel. They're made by one of my buddies. And guys, if you want to help support this channel, shopping at Finn Fishing is the best way to do so. So I'm going to leave some links down below in the description for Finn Fishing and as well the bass hat. So, all right, let's talk about lures and let's talk about selecting the right bait. Now, when you say lure on YouTube videos, everyone wants to have that special lure. Everyone wants to have that lure that nobody has, that catches more fish, or that color that they really truly believe catches way more fish than other colors. And over the course of my life, I have fished in so many situations where I felt like I had dialed in everything very, very specifically. And this really kind of has derived from fishing the Bassmaster Opens for a number of years because, and this is going to apply to you whether you fish tournaments or not, but when you fish on a body of water for 5, 6, 7 days in a row, the exact same body of water, what happens a lot of times is mentally you have tried so many different baits in so many different ways to try and catch a bass. You've done a little bit of everything, but by the time you get to the end of your practice, a lot of times it seems like you have dialed in what you believe is the right color bait, where it needs to be, and how you need to fish it. You feel like you have dialed it in so much at times that there's almost no other baits that will catch fish. And so what I have found out though is that as soon as I get in the boat and as soon as a co-angler gets in the boat come tournament time, I finally get to that area where I know that there's fish. We both start casting our baits. I'm throwing that perfect lure, that one that I know it's the right color because of this reason and that. And guess what? My co-angler's catching fish sometimes just as good as I am, right? And it's on something that is completely different. And this has happened so many times out there on the water that I can't even count how many times that has happened. I remember even just a couple of years ago, I found a stretch of a lake down in Florida on Lake Apopka, and I really felt like the bass wanted a certain size weight, that was 3/8 ounce. And I think that they wanted this green colored bait. It just seemed, I had fished a couple of other colors and it just seemed like this was what the fish wanted. And there was fish up on beds. Well, me and my uncle got in the boat the day after I had found this stretch, and we were just out there fun fishing, having a great time. And he was throwing something completely different. I was throwing that 3/8 ounce beaver style bait. He was flipping a 3/4 ounce black and blue tube. And guess what? Catching them just as good as I was, getting just as many bites as I was. And this is what I'm talking about, is that a lot of times, until you kind of find the areas of the lake that have a lot of fish, it is a waste of time to try and find the perfect lure. Because the truth is, when you find these areas where fish just are, whether it's a pattern or whether it's an area, a lot of times there's just spots. Maybe you fish on a lake and you finally find that rock pile that they're sitting on, or a brush pile, or a grass line, or maybe you find that cove or that creek that is way up away from everything. When you find areas that have life and they have bass, it just seems like bass will eat so many different baits. And so with that being said, I don't worry a whole lot about what I am fishing anymore. I really try to go with the baits that I am confident in until I find fish. So I'm gonna pick up the fast moving, the slow moving, the finesse baits, all those colors, all those ones that work everywhere for me. I'm gonna pick those up and I'm gonna fish them. I'm not gonna sit there and I'm not gonna dig in the bottom of my boat because I think that the fish want this and they want that. I'm gonna fish those baits that I have a lot of confidence in. And if I find those areas, or when I find those areas, that is when I believe an angler should take the time to more or less critique their bait. Because until you find those areas, it just makes no sense. You will waste time in the bottom of your boat and just trying everything. And you have to fully understand. I'm trying to explain this well enough, because you may be fishing a bait that is just not that great, but you hit the right area. For example, maybe you're fishing a whopper plopper, right? Like, I love a whopper plopper. It's a great bait to go and locate fish because you can fish it pretty fast. Say you're fishing a whopper plopper all over the place, but then you find this one area where you had 2 or 3 fish hit that bait. Maybe you only caught 1 of them, okay? That is a sign to me now that, hey, I found a stretch. I found an area where there are some bass, but obviously I don't have the right lure, because I have hooked 33% of the bass that hit it. In my mind, that is not good odds. Like, you want every fish that hits it to commit to the bait. That is when you start to critique your bait. Maybe you find, instead of fishing that whopper plopper, if I slow down with a pop R style bait, that is actually the bait that the bass are getting a lot better. But with that being said, those fish still hit your plopper, right? Because you still got an area where those fish were. And because there's just so many fish in that area, you're gonna have a few of them that hit your bait, whatever it may be. It could, a plopper, for this example, it could be a spinner bait, a jerk bait, it could be a flipping bait of some sort. But then that is when you want to start looking at, how is this fish hooked? How deep is this fish hooked? Maybe you find that these fish are getting the bait really good. Maybe, for example, you're fishing a chatterbait and you're reeling that chatterbait in, and every fish that you start catching, you realize, man, they're hooked almost back in the crushers. Like, those fish are engulfing that bait. Or maybe you're fishing a bait where a chatterbait again, and they're all hooked towards the top of the mouth. Maybe that's telling you, maybe they don't love that bait. Maybe they're shying away from that bait, or they're just nipping at the bait. But until you get in areas with a lot of fish, it's almost pointless in my mind to just sit down there and try on a bunch of different lures and different colors. Just fish those baits that you are confident in until you get a bite or 2, and then slow down and then critique. Because I also believe there's an 80-20 rule in bass fishing, where a lot of times you might get into an area where 80% of the fish will hit about everything, but there is 20% of the fish, and typically they are smarter, that might really want something specific. But until you get into that area, you can't figure out what that 20% want. So guys, I'm just trying to say that I think the most important thing to do when you're out there and you're fishing is cover water. Cover water, cover water until you get bit. Then you can critique. Then you can figure out exactly what the fish want. But keep in mind that it can change at any minute. It's bass fishing, right? And so anyways, guys, I hope that I elaborated this. I hope that I said this, that you guys understand, because I think it's really powerful if you just go out there and fish and cover water. All right, if you guys like this video, give it a thumbs up. Maybe you like my most recent video I did right here. Also, don't forget to check out Fin Fishing right here. See you tomorrow.